Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most epic and well-known stories of all time. The story of Noah and the Great Flood. It's a tale of faith, destruction, and incredible renewal that has captivated people for thousands of years. So, grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's set sail on this ancient journey together. Our story begins in a world that had grown far from its intended path. The Bible, in the book of Genesis, describes humanity at this time as having become corrupt and filled with wickedness. It says that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. Imagine a world where kindness and righteousness were almost entirely gone. It's a pretty bleak picture. But amidst all this darkness, there was one beacon of light, a man named Noah. The scriptures describe Noah as a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. This is so important. It wasn't just that Noah avoided doing bad things. He actively pursued a relationship with God in a world that had collectively turned its back. He had a wife and 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, who also had their own families. Because of the widespread corruption, God was grieved and his heart was filled with pain. He decided to bring a great flood to cleanse the earth of its wickedness, to essentially hit the reset button. But because of Noah's faithfulness, God chose to save him and his family. He didn't want to completely wipe out humanity and the animal kingdom. He wanted to preserve a remnant through which a new beginning could be made. So, God gave Noah a monumental task, a construction project of epic proportions. He said to Noah, "So make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out." And the instructions were incredibly specific. God laid out the exact dimensions, 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. For context, a cubit is an ancient unit of measurement, roughly the length of a forearm. This would make the ark about 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. That's a massive vessel, roughly the size of a 1.5 football fields long. It was to be built with 3 decks, a roof, and a single door in its side. Can you imagine what Noah's neighbors must have thought? Here's this guy, living far from any major body of water, building a gigantic boat in his backyard. The Bible doesn't explicitly record their conversations, but other traditions and interpretations often depict Noah as a preacher, warning the people around him of the coming judgment. He wasn't just building a boat in silence. He was a preacher of righteousness. For years, likely decades, he toiled away, building this vessel exactly as God commanded, all while facing the skepticism and ridicule of everyone around him. It was an incredible act of obedience and unwavering faith in the face of immense social pressure. Then came the next part of the instructions, which was just as mind-boggling. God told Noah to bring into the ark 2 of every kind of living creature, male and female, to keep them alive. For the clean animals, those suitable for sacrifices, and for all the birds, he was to bring 7 pairs of each. On top of that, he had to gather and store enough food to sustain his family and this entire floating menagerie for the duration of the flood. This wasn't just about building a boat. It was about curating a genetic library of all life on Earth and becoming the world's first zookeeper on the most incredible scale imaginable. As the day of the flood approached, a truly miraculous event occurred. the animals began to come to Noah. From every direction, creatures great and small, predators and prey, all came peacefully, 2 by 2, and entered the ark as God had commanded. This wasn't Noah running around with a giant net. It was a divine orchestration. Once Noah, his family, and all the animals were safely inside, God himself shut the door. That detail is so powerful. It signifies that their safety was sealed by God, and the time for repentance for the outside world had passed. Then the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and the springs of the great deep burst forth. It began to rain. And it didn't just rain, it poured relentlessly for 40 days and 40 nights. The water level rose higher and higher, covering the valleys, then the hills, and finally even the highest mountains. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils perished. It was a complete and total cataclysm, a world submerged in water, cleansed of the corruption that had filled it. Inside the ark, Noah and his family were safe, tossed about on the endless waters, but protected within the vessel they had built in faith. For 150 days, the waters prevailed upon the earth. Imagine the sounds, the isolation, the complete dependence on God during that time. It must have been both terrifying and awe-inspiring. But God did not forget Noah. He sent a wind to blow over the earth, and the waters began to recede. The ark, which had been floating freely, eventually came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Even then, they couldn't just open the door and walk out. They had to wait. The world outside was still a vast ocean. Patiently, Noah waited. After 40 days, he sent out a raven, which flew back and forth until the water had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove. The first time, the dove returned, finding no place to rest its feet. A week later, he sent the dove out again, and this time it returned in the evening with a freshly plucked olive leaf in its beak. This was the sign Noah had been waiting for. It was proof that the waters had receded enough for new life, for trees to begin to grow again. The olive branch has since become a universal symbol of peace and new beginnings, and this is where it comes from. A week later, he sent the dove out a final time, and it did not return, signaling that the earth was dry enough to support life once more. When Noah finally removed the covering of the ark and saw the dry ground, it had been just over a year since they first entered. At God's command, Noah, his family, and all the animals finally came out of the ark onto a clean, new, empty world. The very first thing Noah did upon setting foot on dry land is incredibly telling of his character. He didn't run to build a house or scout the land. He built an altar to the Lord. He took some of the clean animals and birds and offered a sacrifice of thanksgiving to God for their deliverance. It was an act of pure worship and gratitude. In response to this, God made a covenant, a solemn promise, not just with Noah, but with all of humanity and every living creature for all generations to come. He promised that never again would he destroy the earth with a flood. And as a sign of this everlasting covenant, he set a rainbow in the clouds. So now, every time we see a rainbow arching across the sky after a storm, it's meant to be a beautiful, vibrant reminder of God's promise of preservation and faithfulness. The story of Noah is so much more than just a tale about a big boat and a lot of animals. It's a profound narrative about faith in the face of ridicule, the consequences of human actions, the justice and mercy of God, and the promise of a new beginning. It challenges us to think about what it means to live righteously in our own time, and to trust in a plan that's bigger than what we can see. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive today. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do. What part of Noah's story stands out the most to you? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell so you won't miss our next exploration into the world's greatest stories. Until next time, stay curious.